rate for this next current year. We're just asking for approval of these items in the package, and we'll talk more about the health plan.
So this is 55 cents per month for employees plus 44 per month for light and power.
Yes.
Okay.
That's for all employees, right? I mean, the $44 is, or is
Yes.
that not
No,
per employee?
that's not per employee, that's all employees.
Okay. My quick question for you is does it have to be negotiated with the union?
No,
That we're-
they've accepted this.
Okay,
You know, we've talked about it, and they're okay with it.
okay.
Well, isn't that part of the contract where we discuss changes with them?
Yes,
Okay, so that's where that falls out, is that,
we did discuss the
and then
change.
you discussed it, they're okay with it? So-
Yes.
Okay.
I move that we approve the renewal of the dental, life, long-term disability, and short-term disability plans.
Support.
Okay. There's a motion and support. Any further discussion? Therefore, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number E, or do we have more on that?
No,
Sure.
that's it now for that.
Okay. Then, moving on to number E, we talked a little bit about it in our budget, but the Baptist, going to 1247.
Right. And I don't really have anything to hand you in terms of a memo or anything. This is just something that's come up, and we decided that it would be better to put it on tonight than to wait a month. And it's included in that capital plan that we've approved. The expected cost is $50,000 or $55,000, and those are based on engineering estimates. And that's, again, to build a section of distribution that goes across all of the Baptist church property on an easement that they're willing to give us, and that will connect from the west side of the Baptist church all the way over to the movie theater, to that strip mall that's over there with Scher's Tanning and Tractor Supply and all that. So
And is that above ground?
it'll be above ground, yes. And like I said, it'll be that Hendricks line, and it's a good thing.
So where is that gonna run? Like, does it, I guess I'm just, there's a,
I can probably, again, I don't have handouts for everybody specifically, but I do
just
think
trying
I
to
have
picture
a
that area in my
picture.
head.
Right.
Right.
Next to the Baptist church is that house?
Yeah, but that's part of the Baptist
Yeah,
church
old
property,
Dr. Ard's house, yeah.
and that's part of the Baptist church property.
Right,
And then
right,
there's,
so you're talking about right along there, because that's what's between the church itself and the movie
Like-
theater.
Then there's
Think
an
they'll show
empty
us
lot there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Those on
church
the,
owns.
on the video can't see this, I'm sure, but here's the Baptist, the current Baptist church is here, and that house is over here, and then over here is the movie theater, and then on this side is, I can't remember
What is
the
next to the
business that's
church?
over there. It's
Is it the car lot?
Is that the auto?
Isn't it Admiral?
Admiral.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah, it's the Admiral. So
okay.
their current line comes down here and then goes over to the church, and they're building a new outreach building behind the church and expanding their parking lot. And so they're going to allow us to have an and this whole parcel is theirs. It goes all the way back to
G Drive.
G Drive, I
G
think.
Drive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're willing to give us this red line easement.
So it'll be in the back of their property?
It's in the back of their
Okay.
property. We'll probably go through the center of the parking
So
lot.
it'll be
We'll have
behind that
we'll have
house,
a
that's
pole.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have a pole in the middle of the parking lot.
Okay.
So it's kind of a good location in the sense that it's gonna be easier to maintain
Yes.
the pole if it's sitting in a
Right.
parking lot, right?
And again, in the past, we've
No
looked at
trees.
having to go all the way around this side to do it. The city
This is crazy.
does not want more overhead on Main Street.
Right.
So if we didn't go this way around, then we'd had to go around to Bowes Road, to get over here to just start facilitating stuff on this side off of Main Street. So This is a big deal for us to be able to move forward
And
with.
what's the green thing there again? The green square?
That's just their diagram. They want to put a soccer field there.
Oh, okay.
That's the property
That's just
behind
the-
that
That's the
house.
Yeah,
property
okay.
behind that house, and they're talking about potentially a ball diamond and having a sports complex.
Okay.
So there. Okay. So, and that's gonna, that 1247 is gonna end up servicing what portion of town? I mean, because
It's-
we have
it's-
Hendricks Line that's running up Hudson, right?
Right, so it'll be, I think I tried to say it before, the east side
Of the west side.
of the
it.
west side of town, north of Main Street.
So does that service my neighborhood, Riverside Drive, when you're saying how far, because we got Hendrick, not you just,
west?
I'm not,
exactly, Tom's at a
yeah,
convention.
Tom's at a convention. I think everything east of Hudson is on a different circuit.
Okay,
It's on,
So it'd be basically the Hudson.
yeah, so it's
Okay.
basically to Hudson.
okay,
Maybe only as far as the tracks, the dividing line, because we have a major service line that goes up the tracks and then back along the commercial businesses on
Right,
Foreman.
right.
So maybe just that area
Valley
between
Vista.
Foreman and the tracks and Main Street.
Okay.
Huh. Can I kind of, is there such thing as a map that I could
here.
sometime look at?
See that?
That says, okay, so this transformer takes care of all these people. Very funny, that's a good map, by the way. But I want to know what transformer takes care of what people?
We
Or
have
do
that.
you have such a
or
thing?
We do, but
That would be
I don't know
interesting.
There's a
there's,
ton of transformers.
what we have,
Or, you know.
right now, Tina, what we've had in Lowell, we had a number of what we call regional substations.
Okay.
So there was a south substation that was over where the skate park is. And
Okay.
then we have a north substation that's out by the bus garage. And then we had the east substation, which is over here on the other side of the river. And so when the new main substation was built on the west side of town, over on Bowes Road, behind the Walgreens, the goal was to bring that new higher level of electricity in terms of voltage to the rest of the community. So in order to do that, a piece at a time, we're trying to replace what we have with new. And so the south transformer, or the south substation, we eliminated about 4 years ago on Bowes Road. And all of the distribution that has come off of that has been brought to what we call step-down transformers that are in the neighborhood, instead of coming from one big substation in a region. We're also in the process of trying to do that on the north sub, and this is part of that. All of that is fed out of the north substation. And so this would be part of the process to eliminate the need of that north substation. And things that we did at Lighthouse in terms of putting them on a different transformer and a different circuit. Route Lowell, Metric Manufacturing, the school there. So we're almost at the point now where we can get that north substation off of our system. And then the east substation, we bored under the river and took new wires over
Yes.
to that side so that we could build out the 1247 voltage on the east side of the community as well. And by the end of the fall, that east substation will be gone as well. So there's not really regional transformers or
Okay.
substations like we used to have.
And what's the advantage, I assume there's an advantage, what's the advantage of not having these regional substations?
One of them is that they would have to be all rebuilt for the new voltage if we wanted to keep regional substations. They're expensive and they're not aesthetically pleasing. And the technology is advanced to the point where you can do the same thing now with smaller, even more regionally located transformers. So instead of having a transformer that's maybe 4,500 kV, then you have 2 or 3 smaller 1,500 kV transformers that carry a higher voltage that bring a better level of electricity to each individual home. So off of that substation, there's two, I think, smaller transformers. One is by Whitesbridge. As you're driving down Bowes Road, just
Yeah.
before you get to Whitesbridge, there's a smaller transformer than that big substation used to be on Bowes Road there, and that's an even more regional transformer.
So how many of these step-down transformers are they all step-down? I don't know exactly what a transformer does.
You got a transformer, every house,
Right.
every, correct me if I'm wrong.
But we have to, now have to step it down from 1247
Mhm.
to something else, and then at each home or group of homes, we step it down again to a transformer that takes in the 220 or 240 into your individual home. So we've stepped it down from 12,470 to the 220 that goes in your home, and we do that in a couple of steps. There probably will be about 10 of these smaller regional step-down transformers instead of having the 3 substations. And so ultimately, we will have a GIS map, a map of the community that shows where those 10 step-down transformers are. But beyond that, we probably have, I'm guessing, the neighborhood of 1,000 other transformers that are hanging on poles or on the end of a subdivision drive, or maybe even at an individual home.
Which is why when electricity goes out, it could just be one of those smaller ones
Right,
versus
the bigger ones. Right.
So, if I'm understanding all of this correctly, it would be a miracle, number one, but if I'm understanding all of this correctly, this is providing higher voltage, which gives us safer, more efficient system, but then does that impact our ability? I mean, as we look at Lowell, and I know, there's been a lot of talk in the community about bringing other businesses into town and how do we continue in economic development, expanding, all of that. Is this going to help if we have other manufacturers come into the community? Is this upgrade to our system going to help us better serve any additional new builds? Yes.
No, it will definitely be better,
Okay.
all right? That's not a huge marketing tool, so to speak. The marketing tool is our cost. And the marketing tool is that we have an obligation to serve, and we do it at that lower cost. We can bring them the highest level of efficient electricity, low losses, 12,470 voltage, but if they use old crappy equipment in their building,
Yeah.
it's not going to help them. So it ultimately ends up being some of their responsibility as to how well what we bring them is used.
Okay.
Because we have, you hear Tom once in a while talk about power factor. And power factor is a measure of how well the electricity is utilized once it gets to its destination. And we had, a good power factor would be 90 to 95%. That means they're using it at 90 to 95% efficiency with what we bring them. We have manufacturing, we have commercial customers on our system that have a power factor of 60% or 65 or 68.
But that has more to do with what they have
That
internally.
has to do with what they have
Okay.
internally as opposed to what we bring them.
So in regards to this, we added it as an action item. Are we looking to approve up to $50,000?
Yes, that's what, I'm looking for an approval up to
Okay.
$55,000, so we can get the
55,
wire and some of
okay.
the things that have a
Okay.
long lead time, get that in
Okay.
before we
So
actually.
we'd get those ordered and they're actually going to come out of next year's?
This one is actually coming out of next year,
Okay,
yes,
so it'll be out of the 2016 that we just approved?
that we just
Okay.
approved. Right.
So I move that we approve up to $55,000 in expenditure out of the capital budget
Yes.
for the 12470 expansion.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
I support.
okay, it's been moved and supported for the Baptist Church project. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. On to informational items. Craig.
And again, thank you. We don't usually have that many action items on a single agenda. We just got piled up this month. So again, I appreciate your patience and walking
I
through those.
appreciate you explaining things.
Yeah.
You help us understand that makes a big difference.
All right, on to the performance data. You have a budget and the performance data, or the income statement and the performance data. So let's look at the performance data first. It was, I think it was opposite that in your package, at least it was in mine, but in any event, no, that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
I assembled it. Fine. It's my fault, I assembled it.
Demotion, demerit.
It was a good month. April is the, reflects the 10th month, year-to-date for this fiscal year. The total electric sales in terms of dollars were up over the previous year. And if you look at our current fiscal year, year-to-date, we're up a couple hundred thousand over the year before. Again, as Steve has talked to you before, that can have, may or may not be relative based on the billing days and how the cycles have worked and the weather and so on and so forth, but it is at least some indication that we have more electric sales in terms of dollars. We look at residents are about the same. The residential sales were actually down a little bit in terms of kilowatt hours, but that was offset by the commercial sales. We're up almost 200,000 kilowatt hours over the same month last year. And commercial sales in terms of dollars were up also for the month. So all in all, a good month. The residential customers last year this time was actually slightly higher than it is now. Again, April is kind of a strange month. People start moving in and moving out in the spring, and it's one of the more active months from that respect. And we're holding steady pretty much with commercial customers that did get up to a high of 415 a year ago, but it's been holding in at 408, 409, 410, 411 category for a number of years now. The total electric requirements for the previous months, based on the reporting from MPPA, shows us that our total electric requirements for February were up, and we know what a cold month February was, but it was up to 6,500,000 kilowatt hours compared to 5,000,008 the year before. And the year before was that called the vortex, and yeah, this February was significantly higher than we've had in a long time. The peak demand was up to 11.8, again a reflection of how much was being used, over 11.4 the year before. April is one of the months that we recalculate the averages for residential and commercial customers, the number of kilowatt hours, and the average invoice for those two categories. You can see there's not much change between the quarter that ended in January and the quarter that ended in April. For an average residential customer, they use 650 or 649 kilowatt hours, depending on which. That was down from the number of kilowatt hours they used the previous year, and their bill was down slightly. Average bill was down $4 from the previous year. With respect to commercial, again, we're seeing growth in the commercial sector, and the average number of kilowatt hours used per month was up over 1,500 kilowatt hours from 10.9 to 12.2. The average invoice was up another $150, and the average cost per kilowatt hour was up slightly, but about the same as it was in January. Then on the back side of the performance data, we see the investments in cash, and as we had been indicating with the change that we found, or the discrepancy that we found with King Milling, things should be looking better again, and so our cash investments are growing back to where they should be. We're at about $1.9 million. My goal is the 2 million mark, and so we're close to being back to that. The delinquents for the month were not too bad. Again, another good month for delinquents from the previous month. Everything was collected on those customers that are still current customers, and a balance on inactive accounts is down slightly from what it had been the previous month. So that's coming down a little bit, and again, we would expect that somewhat as we move through the spring and make some of those collections.
Such a big difference from last year, too.
Yes.
You guys
Yes.
are doing good work.
And then the aging analysis.
Can we go back just for?
Sure.
So, what's your thoughts, or what are you seeing that the delinquent balance at the end of this current month, I mean, was astronomically high as compared to, as my recollection, as compared to the previous month, and I would say as compared to the last previous 6 months? What is the economy sucks, or, I mean, what has caused that huge number?
What number are you talking about? The 48?
Delinquent balance of $4,809.
Customer,
One customer.
one large customer.
Okay,
Yeah. It's one large customer.
okay, well, I mean, that,
If you take that out, what's the,
I don't know the exact amount,
It
but
would
it's in
be
the thousands.
under,
It'd be like
it would be under
1,000.
1,000.
okay, so it's
Yeah.
right in line with everything else
Yeah,
then?
it
Okay.
is.
and is there a worry that we're, with this one large customer, that we're,
Gonna get stiff.
yeah, gonna get stuck, or,
Yeah, we'll
No,
get it.
we'll get it.
Yeah.
okay. Without
get it.
naming names, okay,
It's in the works.
okay.
It's an anomaly.
Huh?
It's an anomaly.
Okay, I'm just because it's something that just jumped right out at me.
Good.
It would be under 1,000.
Not me,
Yeah.
so this one large that's missing, that's just 1 month's bill? Or is that 3 or 4 months of that person or
We don't let
company or
them go that
whatever?
long.
It's 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Say,
it'd
we-
be shut off
You
after
shut off like
20
right
days
away.
past the due date.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. And the same with the aging
I scour
analysis.
over just-
The aging analysis shows that there was a significant amount in the 1 to 30 days compared to what it had been running. And so that total is up as well because of that customer. Okay?
We're sending Sharon on that.
Yeah, we'll send Sharon over with
For the
a
big
nasty
stuff.
gram.
Somebody you and I know. Very well. Okay.
All right. On to the income statement. A good month, 10 months year-to-date. Once again, we had total sales revenue of $680,000 and a total operating revenue of $692,000. Still a little bit under budget. And again, we had a pretty seasonal month in April. And we're only $84,000 under budget year-to-date. And we should add another couple of good months here that will get us close to that by the end of the budget year. Moving over to purchase power. We had a really good month for purchase power. It was under $60,000, almost under $60,000, or $175,000 under budget on purchase power year-to-date. That's a great thing. Part of that is that surplus energy credit that we get, that we talked about earlier. You can see that current year-to-date is actually $245,000 that we received there, and we only budgeted $161, so that's had that impact of helping us with our purchase power expenses. The rest of the expenses are pretty much in line or under budget. When we get down to total operating expenses, in the middle of page 4, we're almost $230,000 under budget year to date on operating expenses, and we have an operating income of almost over 900,000, 915,000 year to date, which is 145,000 over budget for where we expected to be at this point in the budget. So a really good year operationally so far, and it brings us down to a net income of 549,000, which is actually again over budget for this point of the year. We're $135,000 over budget for net income this year. So, in very good position heading into the last 2 months of the year. If we have a warm June, it'll be a significant
Good luck.
boost for the year. Any questions on the income statement?
What's the typical variance, like on the overall budget? Like, so I'm just looking at like the total operating expenses, and the variance is like negative 3.6%, and the, or the other one I was looking for was revenue, if I can find that. That was like minus 1.2. So I'm just wondering what's a typical variance that we?
For us,
Yeah, like by the end of the year on a budget, what's our typical variance to the budget that was?
Steve's goal is always 0.
Well, yeah, I understand, but.
Yeah, like
And
that
it's
ever happens.
And it's usually within 2 or 3%.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
So I
a
saw
lot
some of
of,
these big ones are
there's a lot of
like-
adjusting and reversing entries
true.
that will take place that aren't in this number yet.
Mhm.
So, trying to fix.
By the time we
Sounds
get
like,
to June.
sounds like you can fudge it to whatever. you want.
That's what I heard.
I go through our GL periodically to make sure everything's to the penny.
Oh,
By the time we get to June, though, to Steve's credit, he has made 90 to 95% of the adjusting entries by the time we get to June. So it used to be that all of the adjusting entries were done after the auditors were here. And so whatever we saw as an income statement for year end at June 30th, there were significant differences by the time we actually got
Next
the
time you
audited
come in the
amount.
office.
Right.
Whereas now, the June numbers are pretty darn close to what we can expect as audited financials unless,
Yeah, it's a much better way to run things.
yeah. So, but we've had years where both revenue and expenses were 0.5% or less off of budget.
Okay.
So, and again, I wasn't being facetious when I said Steve's goal is to be 0. That's how hard we try to project what we're actually going to spend. And there's always going to be a category or two that are higher than we expected, and a category or two that are lower than we expected, but for the most part, it usually averages out, and we're pretty close. I don't think I'd have to go back and look to be certain, but I don't think there's a year since I've been here that the budget has been off by more than 4%.
Okay. That's what I was kind of wondering, is because when I saw some that were like 1%, I was like, it's kind of tough to do. So, especially where I work, it's tens of percents are not uncommon.
I have 2 questions, and I don't mean to be nitpicky, but
Well, they don't.
I'm Well, I come from the world of nonprofit where we have a slightly different perspective on some of these things.
Okay.
For example,
We're nonprofit.
We're not profit.
well, I know, but different nonprofit. Anyway,
We have a different perspective than you.
in social service agencies, what I'm accustomed to doing, like when I've been an executive director of a nonprofit and a budget is approved, there's usually something in the policy that says, like, I noticed some of our line items are over budget. Granted, our bottom numbers are great, but some of our line items are over budget. And I don't know, and I will have to go back and reread the policy because I don't know that we actually have anything in there. A common practice for me in the nonprofit world that I live in is when you have approved budget numbers, you don't spend over that line item, whatever is approved, without coming back to the board to say, hey, we have a blip in the radar and it's gonna be different. That doesn't seem to be the case here. And again, our bottom numbers are great, but as I look at some of these things, the one that sort of jumped out to me is like conference and seminar expense. Like at what point do we make it, obviously when it comes to fixing something, transformers, some of those things, we have to fix the system. I mean, there's no choice, so you fix the system. But when it comes to some of these things like conference expense, why would we allow that to go over the budgeted item, budgeted line item? You know, I'm just thinking in terms of, and that's how my brain works on fiscal management, because that's the world I've lived in, and this is a little bit different. So.
It's a good question, and the reason is that we recognize, because we have a lot of line items, I mean,
Yeah.
we have a lot of GL numbers
Yeah.
in this budget.
Yeah, there's a ton, yeah.
Most nonprofits that you deal with
Have a
don't
slightly smaller list.
have a smaller list, and so
Chart of accounts is smaller.
you have a tendency to have to be more accountable to each of those line items when you have a small list. We have so many line items that we can't be 100% accurate on each line item. But what we try and do is at least be accountable in each category. So as you go through the categories, almost every category is under budget year to date.
Most are,
In terms of the bolded
Yep, yeah.
categorical items.
Yeah, there's
So,
a couple
so
that are
we
older.
we trade off
Right.
within a major category. If there's a need in one area and we can take it out. We are also try to be extremely fiscally responsible. And, but we do allow different line items to be other than what we had budgeted
Right.
if there's a need. And so this particular item is really employee education.
Okay.
When we send somebody to a conference and a
Right.
seminar.
Right.
And so if there's things that come up that are important for our employees as we go through the year, then we go ahead and make those decisions. But we recognize that we're going to try and cut other places.
Does that also, is that miscellaneous conference seminar include the board
Yes,
Yes.
seminars? Okay.
that's hard to anticipate too. Like right now, who's gonna go to a conference
Right.
for the next year?
Right. But, and I noticed like admin, general outside services is over also. And I guess, and again, this is the way my nonprofit brain works. I guess I would like to see us think about some of those types of things, like with the, training is extremely important. I'm not discounting that. But when we start to look at the different conferences that are available, particularly for board members, and to say, I personally think it's important for us to have the board represented at the different conferences, not necessarily to send multiple people to one conference, but to have, like, we don't have anybody going to APPA in June, do we?
Not that I'm aware of.
So to me, it's really important as a board that we, and as an organization, that we look at saying it'd be really ideal to have us represented at each of those different conferences so that we can continue to bring that information back to the whole versus let's send 2 or 3 people out to one. So I guess moving forward, to me, I feel like we have to kind of look at some of that stuff and say, you know, because, I mean, I've sort of been debating about whether or not to go out to APPA, because I think it's important to have someone there. But I look at this and I feel like I don't want to go because we're way over budget, you know? So I think it's important for us to think about that throughout the year. And as we're saying, yeah, somebody can go out to a conference, we have to be paying attention to those things.
Okay.
And again, I know our bottom line is great, because there's other things where we make it up, but I still sort of feel like we have to pay attention to some of those categories a little bit differently.
Okay.
But that's my nonprofit brain, so,
But I think this budget's a little different in the sense that.
I know.
Well, because I know like a lot of the projects I work on at work, we're given a budget, but it's more of an allocation.
Yeah,
And it's a not to exceed type thing.
right.
And then if you want to exceed it, well, you have to go get approval or, you know, and this kind of a budget is really more of a plan. You know, this is what we expect for this coming year, and there's going to be variations on all of it. And
Just like I always say, the only thing I can guarantee
Well-
when we approve the budget is that it's not going to end up exactly this way.
Yeah.
But
and-
as a nonprofit organization, we belong to the people of Lowell. I think we still have a responsibility to say in those categories, if we're looking like we're bumping close, we have to have a conversation about that. We have to look at that. And I just think we have a responsibility. I get the bazillion line items, but those broad categories, I think it's important for us to be paying attention to that.
Well, and I think we do, because every month they go
Yeah.
over this and they're like, yeah, you notice this thing's off by
Right,
this much this month because
Right.
of the purchase power,
right.
or we had to run this for this reason, and so I think this is our awareness and, I was gonna say that this is a good spot to see trends in, but I'm not gonna mention that this time. And then, but I think what's different though is that again, this isn't one of those budgets where you say, here is $100, go do something and bring me back the change. It's, we're gonna expect to spend $100 when we go to the store, and you might come back spending 120, or you might come back spending 80, because you don't know what things cost when you go to like the hardware store or something, from a personal level. And it's that kind of a thing where they're trying to predict what we think we'll need, but this isn't a pool of money type of a budget. It's a operating budget.
I agree with
So-
you to a certain extent, because like I said, when I look at the expenses for, when I look at some of the other things that were slightly over, and again, the bottom line looks great, but I don't
Well,
mean to
and I
harp
think
on
that's
this,
where it's up
but
to-
I think it's important when you look at something, the two things that I notice in terms of categories that are over is admin, general outside services, and,
That was our legal expense.
okay,
Yeah.
which is obviously very unpredictable, so that's good to know.
There's-
And the miscellaneous. And my only point is, when
Right.
we're saying to people, okay, we have conferences to go to, we should be looking at that number, and to me, it's not okay to go over those budget numbers to send another person to a conference.
But that's not
Without,
your decision.
but here's
No, I
my
understand.
point.
I
If
understand.
the board approves a budget and we approve those categories, then without coming to the board and saying, hey, we think this is really important, so we are going to be adjusting that budget number because we're going to be sending additional people. I'm not saying the board makes the management decisions, but I'm just saying from a fiscal management standpoint, that's part of our job, is to be paying attention to those things.
And my response to that is, do you want to have to be responsible for that? Because,
Right.
Not every line item, no, but I think our job is.
But every line
is
item that gets into
pay
that
attention to those
situation?
Categories.
every line item that gets into that situation, do you want to be responsible for?
Categories.
What categories? Then you have to give me a list of categories that you
Well,
want.
you said like these total miscellaneous expenses.
Okay.
And this is my nonprofit brain.
No,
at
I
work,
understand.
so
I understand. I'm just,
I'm accustomed to
I either need to be able to
managing budgets that way.
facilitate your need
Yeah.
or recognize that you have a concern. So
Yeah.
there's a difference.
Yeah.
Because the budgetary solution to this is to budget everything high so that that doesn't become an issue. And we always end up being under budget every year because we overestimate budget items so that we don't get into that situation. So
We don't wanna do
Steve,
that.
in trying to
Right.
get us to a zero
Right.
variance, we try and budget everything as closely
Right.
as we can, knowing that there's going to be some discrepancies either way in a given category. So,
Right.
we're willing to do whatever
And that's a
you...
much more transparent way of doing it too, than to always have a fudge factor. Because again, when I
Right.
think of the projects I work on, where people budget and say, no, we're just gonna add 10% because we never know what's gonna happen. And part of me feels like, why? But then,
Right.
politically, you kind of have to in that sense, because,
Right.
when you encounter those, weird things that always happen.
Right.
Someone says, why are you over budget? Well, because of the weird things that always happen. So you have to
Right.
kind of throw something in, but then when everything goes well and you've got extra, it's like, what were you doing? So that it's much better, and I know that generally we try to, even in my industry, we try to do accurate forecasting, not wishful forecasting. And so that you don't challenge somebody for saying, hey, why'd you go 12 hours over on a 1,000-hour budget? Because that's actually very good if you did that. But what we do, and what I kind of see our role as, is that we look for those outliers and say, why is this?
Right.
There's one here you haven't yet to ask about, but I wanted to ask about the one that was like 1,000% change. I forget where, oh, it was the substation expenses. You know, had a big one, so I was just gonna ask, why was that such a huge difference? But when I get the explanation, it's like, okay, that makes sense. And the same, you know, if they need approval to go over a certain budget, they should need approval to go under it as well. You know, if all of a sudden more money starts coming in, do we need to get approval, say, hey, you know, because maybe they're charging too much? Well, no, that's not really what the budget's for. The
Right.
budget's that's the tool that we use to manage this whole operation.
It is a tool,
And
and the thing
it's
that
not a-
concerns me is this conference and seminar expense, which to me is somewhat of a discretionary expense, and it's almost 41% over.
But the
So-
category.
But it is discretionary.
The category is only 3% over.
Right, and amounts to how
So-
many dollars
and
out of our
I-
budget?
Yeah,
I'm-
that's.
I'm just, and I'm saying, when it comes to the line item, I'm just saying, I think we have a responsibility to stop and think about some of those decisions, that's all, and it's just.
I do.
So, that's all.
If you want,
And as-
if you want to, you can,
and
but I do.
Yeah.
I understand, I really understand.
I know you're picking on me, and I
No,
know it's
well-
a nitpicky thing.
But I think,
Yeah.
I can get my 2 cents. I think it's,
just don't know.
by charter, you know, our position is to, basically, here's the direction that we want Lowell Light and Power to go. And we hire, the only person that has, we hire and fire the general manager. So he has the discretion, and I look at it, the budget a little bit differently than I think that you do, and the numbers, because I look at more of the bottom line where we are, because I think it is not, I view it a little bit different than, say, my personal budget, that I say, okay, I have $100 this week to spend, and that's all I, you know, or whatever, that's all I have. I can't go and, unless I go and work and get more money to come in, that's what I have. So I understand where you're going, here's my budget, I can't go over this, I can go under it, but I can't go over this, because that's all I have to spend. I look at this as a tool for Lowell Light and Power, but I look at it as more of a tool for the city of Lowell, for the council, because of the pilot, they have to budget their streets and everything, so we're looking at that. So, me personally, I'm looking at the bottom line of that, and the bottom line is we're doing great, as long as the general manager, whether he moves things from this pot and uses it over here in this pot or whatever, for me, that's not a concern. My concern is the bottom line and what our ratepayers are paying, and showing that they're constantly at 10 to 15% below what, if Consumers Power or DTE were here, what they would be paying. And that's, for me, is the bottom line. And it's not a bottom line of from category to line item to line item to line item. Yes, I like to look at it and say, oh, here's where we were, and why is this? And the question was, that I brought up earlier, was why did we see such a delinquent? And we find out it's one employee, or not one employee, excuse me, it's one customer that caused us to be that amount. But other than that, that's, to me, that's where my responsibility ends. My response is with the general manager and what decisions that he makes in the budget and where to move things. I'm personally okay with that.
And again, from a legal standpoint, I'm used to nonprofit worlds where, from a fiduciary legal standpoint, that board's responsible, period. If anything happens, the board goes down. So that's why, and that's probably a different situation here from a legal standpoint, but that's what I'm accustomed to.
No, I understand.
So that's why I
understand.
look at things a little bit differently.
Okay,
So,
as,
But I think
Listen.
also, just to add to that, the capital expenses, those are things that, if they need to go over that, they have to come back and, if we authorized 55,000 for the, that 12,470.
Yeah.
Right.
And they want to spend, 67,000 on it,
it comes back.
he has to have to come back and do that. And again, that's the capital expense, and that's different because that is kind of drawing from our pool of money, so to speak. versus just the operating budget that this one is.
Okay, we got a lot of other things, let's move on. Greg?
All right. Any other questions on the income statement? All right. Moving on then, the next item is capital
Oh, wait,
expense.
Sorry, I did have a
Yep.
question that I had alluded to.
Too late.
About the, well, I already asked it, we just never got it answered.
Oh,
It was the one I mentioned about the, you remember, don't you?
Substation
The substation expense. But it was like budgeted at 800 and it wound up costing
Let's see, where you
2,000 or
at?
whatever it was.
Yeah,
Which page?
Page
this,
2, way at the bottom, like the fourth from the bottom. Substation expenses, the budget was like $800 and the expenditure is 13,000 and then so I was just kind of wondering what that was and.
and this kind of goes with Tamala's concern too. A lot of the times, I expect labor to go in certain categories. And some of the labor for here, I thought was gonna be able to be capitalized, which means it would show up on this sheet, and then when the project closed, it gets put into depreciation, and it's the depreciation line expense. So a lot of this labor is actually being expensed through our operating budget instead of our capital budget. So
Oh.
it hits here instead of here.
So why did that change? or what?
Well, just FERC has different things that can be capitalized with projects, whether it's like an improvement or if it's normal maintenance. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, so what we thought was normal maintenance, they said, well, that's really an improvement.
Other way around.
Or,
Other
yeah,
way
vice
around,
versa.
what we thought was improvement.
Yeah.
And so then we had to move it to here, okay.
We thought that the removal of this east substation and the new work that we had to do to facilitate that was a new project.
Mhm.
And by FERC standard, it's maintenance of the old substation to make it better.
Okay,
Yeah, like a lot of the vendors we hire, we can capitalize, but our own time, we're expensing.
right, okay.
So it gets kind of intricate in the rules.
Yeah.
If we'd have had if we'd have had hired someone to do the work, that would be different than if we do it ourselves, in terms of.
So
how
even if we
get-
can do it more cheaply, we have to expense it here. Then if
Instead
we were
of
to hire
capitalize.
someone for more money, we could capitalize it.
Yes.
so,
Okay,
so what I'm hearing is basically what you're seeing is that you had a budgeted amount that you were gonna budget for that.
It's just showing up somewhere
It's just
else.
showing up in a different spot because of what the FERC rules are doing. And so you probably would see, in a different line item, you'd see less money or,
Right,
so we should see
Use-
more money remaining in the capital
plan.
plan.
And we might have some
Like
left
by-
over, you know, we have 127,000 to spend. Because
Okay.
otherwise it would have showed up in this amphitheater sub removal.
Okay,
So, and then also.
so then that value there is 14,000 or 13,000 less than.
Yeah,
what
and I
about-
think when we
wherever
modified
that thing went.
the budget, amended a few months ago, we made that amendment to make it match. And then kind of
Okay.
with Tamala's question, a lot of the conference money is payroll dollars that would have gone in other line items.
Okay,
Like, I
when
know
someone's
that-
at a conference.
like the
it's their
admin
payroll
is
stuff.
slightly over.
Okay.
But it's only slightly over relative to what I budgeted through April. We still have
Okay.
$20,769.
Yeah.
But if you look under customer accounting, supervision, assistant expense, record collection, miscellaneous customer accounts expense, all those are $6,000, $5,000, $1,600 under budget. Where if somebody would have been here, it would have just gone there.
Okay.
So it's kind of tricky to know what conferences are gonna come up, so.
Well, but that's a reflection of why this is the tool we use, because if our priority includes conferences, and we see this, it's like, you know what, that's okay, that's within the realm of what we
Right.
think is worth the priority variation within our budget.
Right.
I mean, maybe next year it's more important to spend more time in the office, I don't know. but-
Another thing
Okay.
that's on the other side of that is also, as in my role with MPPA and MMEA, most of my conference expenses are paid through them. And so that doesn't show up here like it used to. And so again, we're sending other people instead of me, or sending more people, including me, because my expenses aren't in there, they're covered with MPPA or MMEA, so.
So we shouldn't show that as a credit?
Just to mess things up more.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I was kind of serious about that, but it's a small thing, but it seems like that's, if we used to pay for that and now we don't.
And we're gonna have to, yeah, when we go
Someday.
roll.
Yeah, when he decides not to be so responsible, right?
Okay, let's move on.
All right. Capital expenses are, both your sheets are there. The capital expenses that are by GL or project number, or by GL, and then the second page, which is by project number. And again, as Steve said, we have about $127,000 remaining in the capital budget through the end of the year.
About 100 of that seems to be the biodigester. Because I noticed that like on the next year's capital budget, there's a very small amount approved for the biodigester.
Right.
Is it expected that the 100,000 for the biodigester is still going to be spent in the next couple months?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, we just spent 40 or 48
Yeah, I
of
think we
it.
just invoiced
That hasn't
roughly
showed
around
up on
50
here.
that'll
Okay.
show up next month.
Okay.
I think we'll have some carryover. I don't think we'll be invoiced for the remaining of this.
Okay.
And then outages, we had none in the month of April. That was good.
Great news.
And on to the manager's report. First item is MPPA, MMEA continue their executive search for the general manager. I did receive a list of candidates on Friday last week, and we did get a good group to select from. The search firm narrowed it down to 12 excellent candidates, and so we have to narrow it down from there to 5 or 6 that MPPA would choose to interview. And I did mention here that I was reelected for another term as board chair of MPPA.
Congratulations.
And it is an honor to be able to do that, especially in a time like this when there's a transition going on there, and to be able to play a key role in selecting where that agency is going to go and have input into who that new manager is going to be. So I thank you as the board for the opportunity to continue to do that. And it does take my time, and as Steve knows, I'm not here as often as I used to be because I'm doing something there, but I think it's a good cause. And there's a lot of new amendments and bills to amendments that are being introduced in the state right now, both the House and the Senate. The governor's office has not endorsed any of them at this point. So there's a vast array of ideas and positions on how to proceed with Michigan's energy initiative for the future. We're probably getting to a point where some of that's going to come to the surface over the next couple months before Congress recesses for the summer. I know that the governor had hoped to have something in place by then. I don't think that's going to happen. That's our prediction, that there's so many variations out there right now that they're not going to get waded through all of that before summer recess, so it'll probably be in the fall. But they are looking at some of those things we've talked about before, like raising the portfolio standard for renewables, eliminating energy optimization, or possibly even combining energy optimization and renewable energy into a single plan for determining how efficient we are. And then the other item we've talked about at length also is the fact that part of Michigan, 10% of Michigan is deregulated, or 10% of Michigan's commercial customers can opt to go to some outside vendor for their services, not consumers or DTE. So, and what happened in the UP with that? So all those things are on the table. The person that is coming to Lowell to talk to the Chamber and Rotary and view the biodigester that we talked about earlier, probably on July 15th, is the quote-unquote energy czar for Michigan. Her name is Valerie Brader. She was appointed by the governor to head the new energy department, and she's a very well-educated and informed person, a good person to have in that position. So it'll be very beneficial and interesting to have her come to Lowell. That's a good thing. I'm looking forward to that. And as we've also mentioned, the APPA National Conference is June 5th through the 10th. And as Tamala indicated, we don't have any board members attending. There's still time if anybody wants to. Just let Sharon know. But we are running close. It's what, maybe 3 weeks away? So. System generation and startup. We have the biodigester continues to move closer to operation. We talked a little bit about it last month, and we did decide, Greg Northrup and I, to begin commercial operation effective May 1st. And so that is our official startup date. They will be charging us for the electricity generated for the month of May. Up to this point, we have not been charged for any of the electricity generated. And in turn, we will also get a lease payment for the month of May for the facility. So we as you know, our contract with LEED is for a fixed amount of kilowatt hours every month that is supposed to total what they expect to generate for an entire year. So it's that year divided by 12. For this month, since we know that they're not going to be up to full capacity, they're just going to bill us for what was generated. Then starting in June, assuming they're up to full capacity, we'll fully implement the purchase power contract and the number of kilowatt hours that we're supposed to get billed on a monthly basis after that. We've had a number of discussions with LEED and SPART. They're still having some issues. There are still some random odor issues. There's some odor issues indoors. There's an occasional odor outdoors. We've talked a little bit about the lighthouse waste and that coming sooner than we expected in terms of the volume. About the fog has not been the quality that they expected. It has a higher liquid content, a higher water content, and that has implications on the system as well. That's the primary reason they haven't been able to get up to full capacity yet, because there's not enough BTUs in the fog to provide the energy for the bacteria to produce the methane. They're implementing right now a process of when the fog gets put in the tank, it actually is separating in the tank into 3 layers. There's a heavy solids that sinks to the bottom, then there's a layer of water, and then the real light, good stuff with the high BTU content floats to the top. And the problem is there's this large water level in between that's decreased. So when you stir it all up and you take it into the biodigester, a third of it is water. It has no BTU content at all. So that means a third of what they're putting into the biodigester is not helping the bugs create methane. So they're going to start extracting that water out of the middle. They're putting a pump and some openings into the tank at that point to try and drain off that water before it goes into the biodigester. That way, the volume that they put in has a higher BTU content and it's more concentrated. So again, drawing that water off will help hopefully increase the amount of gas produced, which will help get them to full capacity. That also has implications on what's going into the treatment before it goes into the wastewater treatment system. So that's causing them a little bit of a problem in that segment of the system. Another issue is that when they're squeezing the water out of the digestate that comes out of the bottom of the reflow tank, the squeezer, I don't know what the technical term is for it, doesn't have a fine enough filter on it, and there's solids from the digestate getting into the water side instead of the side that's supposed to go out and be fertilizer. And that's having a tendency to clog some of the pipes and some of the water treatment system. So both of those things are having an impact on the water treatment tank, the big one on the outside of the building. That occasionally gives off an odor because of those two components being in it. It also is having a tendency to clog up or constrict some of the pipes inside. The stuff is so thick that when the velocity slows down, it starts to cling to the sides, and it's oily and greasy, and pipes need to be cleaned and that type of thing. So those are a couple of issues that they're working with that are preventing them from getting to full capacity, and also occasionally